What's up, everybody? My name is REDRUP, and you're listening to the It's Not a Phase podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Conjurer bassist Conor Marshall to talk about the band's long-awaited second album, Páthos. We discuss how the pandemic caused continued delays, working with Will Putney, the meaning behind the title Páthos, the album artwork and how it ties into the album's themes, and loads more. Before we get started, let's cover off the boring stuff. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support the podcast, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review wherever you're listening to this. We also have a Patreon, where everyone gets access to each episode a week earlier than everyone else, and a merch store too. You can also follow and reach out to me on social media. All of the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Conor Marshall of Conjurer. How you doing, man?
Hello, I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all good, man, all good. I mean, the big news for you guys is album number 2, Páthos. How does it feel to be finally putting that record out? Because I know it's been something that's kind of been there for a little bit now.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's both sides of it. On one hand, it's like super exciting and we're just excited for everyone to hear it and we hope everybody loves it and all of that. But then the other side is, say, it's been 4 years since the last album, but then we've been sat on this like it's been done for over a year. And so we're kind of just at the point now where we're like, just get it out. Like, we don't care anymore. Like, just have it. Like, we wanted people to hear it ages ago. So yeah, I don't want to say bittersweet. That's not right. But there's definitely both sides to it, where it's first and foremost super exciting and we'll say we're really happy about it, but we are also ready for it to be out, essentially.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a relief as well because, you know, you've been kind of, like you say, sitting on it and, you know, all these delays that have been happening anyway because of COVID and stuff. And it's kind of like, oh no, this is when it's going to get released. Oh no, this is when it's going to get released.
Yeah.
And like that finally, you know, it is actually happening now.
Because we held it back a little bit anyway to try and make sure that, like, we could have released it 3-4 months ago or whatever, but we didn't want it to be one of those albums where it comes out, but then if you wanted it on vinyl, you get that vinyl 6 months later. So we deliberately held it back a little bit to try and make sure that everybody gets it on day one and like has it in whatever format they wanted, or at least, because there has still been a little bit of a vinyl delay, unfortunately, more so than obviously what we expected. But it shouldn't be like more than a month until someone has it at the absolute worst case now. So yeah, you're right. After how long it's taken with everything going on with the pandemic and stuff like that, it is definitely a relief.
Yeah, because I think I remember you mentioning when we spoke at Download Pilot, like even then, like everything was ready in terms of, obviously it was recorded, it was produced, album artwork and everything was picked out. You even had the singles picked out, but COVID put all that to a stop.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
How long would you say you've kind of been waiting to release Páthos? How, like, if let's say COVID never happened, when do you think we would have heard it?
It's tricky to say, to be honest, because it was never meant to be 4 years. It wasn't even meant to be like, even if you take away the 2 years of the pandemic, it wasn't meant to be initially a take till 2020. Like, I remember when we were putting Maya out, Dan, the guitarist and vocalist, was like, yeah, we'll probably be back in the studio within a year. And at the time I remember thinking like, well, that feels a bit short. Like, we'll probably tour it for at least a year and then start working on the next one. But it definitely wasn't meant to be as long as it was. But we got very fortunate that people just seemed to love Maya and it like just took off. So that meant we got all these amazing offers for like tours and festivals and opportunities to do this and that and whatnot. That just meant we were too busy to write an album, essentially. Like, we don't write on the road. We write at home and send each other files and all that sort of stuff. So the plan was, when the pandemic hit, we were just about to start like a month-long tour, but the plan in general was to be a lot quieter in 2020, to sit down and get the album done. So yeah, the plan was to try and have it out like even before the end of 2020, if not early 2021. And then that's obviously pandemic has happened and delays and stuff like that. So we've ended up where we are. But yeah, it's hard to say for definite, because on the other hand, the being forced to stay at home was what gave us the opportunity to really sit and focus and get the album done when we could. So not that the pandemic was a good thing in any way, but it definitely helped us in that sense. So who knows if it would have come together in that same way had there not been the pandemic. But yeah, in terms of like, had everything gone perfectly, it would have been out, say, over a year ago, something like that.
I guess the downtime that COVID kind of gave you, you mentioned you guys don't really do well writing on the road. I guess from what you said, you're kind of a band where you have like, you're either in touring mode or you're in writing mode, or it's not like you can dabble.
Yeah, kind of. Like we'll mess around with stuff. Like if we are sound checking at a show and someone plays a cool riff or something like that, we will be like, oh, what was that? And like just to figure it out and say, hope we can remember it and that sort of thing. But you're right, it was never set out that way. We never deliberately were like, nope, we're only going to tour when we tour and write when we write and all of that. Yeah. But that's just how things have worked out. We're just like, we're not that band. And I think they'd kind of figured that out before I even joined, because I came into it a little more like, well, no, we can write in a room together. Like I like writing with other people personally, because I like having almost like that instant gratification of being able to throw an idea out and get an immediate response, not have to like, oh, I've got this idea. Okay, well, I'll demo it or I'll tab it up. Then I have to send it to everyone. Then I have to wait for everyone to finish their day at work, come home, eat dinner, go, oh yeah, Conor sent that thing, listen to it, kind of not even necessarily reply straight away. Like I like being in the environment where you can ping ideas off each other. But it's just not how we work as a group and as a collective. Like there'll be little micro doses of that. But yeah, you're right. It's worked itself out where we are very much in one or the other, essentially, rather than say we haven't found a way yet to merge the two.
And I guess, because COVID kind of stopped you guys from touring, even if you wanted to.
Exactly.
You kind of could have just you could then just focus on the writing and putting the record together.
Yeah, pretty much. That was, I've kind of been joking that like, apparently that's how you get a Conjurer album. If you want a new Conjurer album, you have to legally tell us we can't leave our houses, and then we can focus on it and get it done. Yep.
And you worked with, it's Will Putney that helped produce the records. How did that kind of come together, especially because of, the kind of, reputation that he's got now as a producer and the bands that he works with?
Yeah, so that came, we were initially, I mean, obviously we were aware of Will Putney anyway, because like you say, of who he is and the albums he's done and like kind of who he is within our scene. So it definitely wasn't a case of like, oh yeah, we discovered him or anything like that. Yeah. But, exactly, like, oh yeah, Will Putney's our thing. We gave Will Putney. No, he ended up so we did a tour in March 2019 in America with Rivers of Nile, and the last show of that tour, Kerrang filmed like every band's sets and then kind of edited them and released them onto YouTube. And so we knew that was happening, but what we didn't realize at the time is that they got Will Putney to mix that. And so when that came out, we were kind of like blown away by how good it sounded for a live thing that had kind of been recorded in like a club. And it wasn't like, it was shot really well, but it wasn't like a full pro shot production. Like obviously you see these festival shows or anything like that. And so that kind of, his name would have always been in the hat anyway, but that would definitely kind of opened us up way more to the idea of, oh, well, maybe he could do the next album, because like he's captured our sound so well, considering obviously it wasn't his equipment he was using. Like it wasn't our equipment that we were really using, it was like stuff we'd rented and whatnot. He wouldn't obviously have been there to set it up however he would have ideally liked it, but still got such good results out of it. So yeah, we kind of went from there. We still considered other options, but no, like reached out to him and we started having the conversations and whatnot. And it worked out quite well because he was hoping to basically expand and get away from like the kind of typical sound he'd been working with anyway. Like he wanted to start working with bands who sounded a bit more like us. And so it just say kind of worked out that way. And the plan initially was, he was meant to do everything. He was meant to do like full production as well as mixing and mastering. And so we were just in the stages of figuring that out and like costing it all up about, oh, we're going to fly over to America and like spend 3 weeks with him getting it all done. Yeah. Or do we want to fly him over? We'll rent a studio in the UK, all of that, blah, 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 blah. But then, pandemic hit and we just kind of had to turn a little bit. So he ended up, there was still an initial phase where we were trying to figure something out, but it became apparent pretty quickly that it just wasn't going to work. And so it was just a case of, okay, well, we'll kind of deal with as much as we can on our end and then he'll just mix and master it. And he's still absolutely like smashed it. And it sounds like we're super happy with it and it sounds great. And he really still managed to capture what we wanted, but we didn't quite get the full experience that like was initially planned, essentially. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's two occasions then where, he's been kind of given not the full package.
Kind of,
and made the most out of it.
This was definitely closer because obviously we knew we were working with him, right? So we could email him and go back and forth. And like, if there was anything he needed us to specifically do or anything like that, then we could do that. And we did get our sound engineer in to like mic us up and everything like that, because obviously he does it live and all that sort of stuff. So it was definitely, way better set up than the Kerrang thing to yield those results. But it's still it's one of those things, and we talked about it with him like briefly because we just did a tour with End that he was on at the start of May, and so we didn't want to like punish him about the album or anything like that, but like we did have that chat and like oh, how do you think it would have turned out if we'd have been able to do it properly? And like we kind of all agree that it would have potentially been even better, which is on one hand a little bit disheartening because you want everything to be as good as it can, but it's also kind of nice to know that we don't know any of this yet, but if, say, for album 3, we did decide to go back to Will, like we know that there is also that step up to still go, rather than being like, crap, this is the best we're ever going to sound, or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess you did the best with the circumstances at hand, like not to bring it up again, but the pandemic, you know.
Exactly. That was pretty much it. Like we ended up recording at least half of it, but most of it ourselves, like in our practice space that we were renting at the time, like using our own gear and our own mics and all that sort of stuff, during a lockdown, like when it was one of the proper lockdowns, but we managed to scoot under like that it is technically work and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're right, we definitely did have to pivot and make the best of it.
Well, you know, everyone did, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we weren't alone in that. I'm sure there's loads of bands whose albums hadn't been done the way they initially planned or anything like that.
And not even in terms of like making the album, but there were so many bands that released their albums just as things started locking down, and then they never got to tour it properly and promote it properly. Yeah,
that's one thing that, again, not that the pandemic was good, but we were quite lucky with the fact that like we would have hated to have been in that position and say you either have to hold, because we had friends who were sitting on albums and they were like, oh, we'll just hold it back. But obviously no one thought the pandemic was going to be 2 years. Like that's a long time to sit on an album. So yeah, it would have been horrible to be in that position where you either have to, release it and then not be able to tour it and kind of not be able to do it properly, or hold it back and potentially end up holding it back for 2 years. I can't imagine what that would have been like. That would have been way worse than what we've ended up going through.
Yeah, that would have been crazy, because then you're like waiting 2 whole years to play these songs live. Which I guess you guys have almost done anyway because of how long you've held on to this record, right?
Kind of, yeah. We got a little bit impatient. The plan, we'd always said we were never going to play anything. Obviously, with Maya, we didn't have a choice because those were just the songs we had as a band at that point. So obviously, we were going to be playing them live before the album came out. But with this one, we'd said we wouldn't play anything live until the album was out. But we then scrapped that and got impatient. And so straight from the download pilot, we opened it with It Dwells, and I think we've basically opened every set we've played since with that, and we've started bringing Rot into the set now as well, even though the album's not out. So you're right, it was definitely a wait, but we kind of cut that wait short from what we'd expected it to be anyway. So
so what's it been like kind of playing those songs live finally and kind of giving them the time to shine in that kind of environment?
It was weird because normally, like, we're such a live band typically, and like all the stuff with Maya, even though, like, say, we don't write on tour or anything like that, but I know the guys, they would write a song and it would get road tested. Like they would then play it at a gig and go, oh, okay, well, this bit didn't quite work and all of that, or this bit was actually kind of tricky to play and do vocals at the same time, so we might need to simplify a little bit or something like that. But whereas we didn't have that opportunity with these songs, like we couldn't even get in a practice room really and play them together. So it wasn't until like our first rehearsals for like Download where we then played those songs. But even then, that's not the same as playing it at a gig. So like it was super weird to be like, cool, our first gig back after 2 years is Download, which is also the biggest thing we've ever done. And also, rather than start with something we're at least familiar with and is kind of muscle memory, we're going straight in with a brand new song that no one's ever heard. We've never played live. It was daunting, and it was definitely like strange. It Dwells got comfortable pretty quickly. Rot took a little bit longer for me personally. Like when we started playing that, we toured Europe for all of March with Celeste, and we started playing Rot for the first time on those shows. And it took me, I would say, the first couple of weeks to kind of be comfortable playing that song and like kind of getting into it and it being like it feeling like it was hitting live the way it was supposed to. That one was definitely a little more strange. But I think now we're at a point where, anything we've played live, which I think is just those 2 songs, kind of like fits right into the set now and feels like it fits a little more naturally than it did beforehand. Yeah.
And, you mentioned the Download pilot there. It's kind of like you just threw yourself right in the deep end, starting such a big show with such a new song.
It was stressful, but fun. Like ultimately, we were just happy to be back doing something, right? Especially to be doing something of that kind of stature, and just to be fortunate enough to even be there. We could have played any songs, and I would have been happy. But it was more stressful than it maybe needed to be. I'm doing it that way.
That was such a weird event, though, wasn't it? Because it's just that was right in the middle of lockdowns, and obviously everyone had to get tested going in, and you went from
that must be the most stressed or nervous I've ever been. Like the 30 minutes doing that lateral flow that I then had to obviously like take a picture of, like I'm sure you would have done as well, and send it to the people at the pool and all of that. Like, yeah, my heart was pounding for 30 minutes straight. I hated it.
Yeah, and they had to scan the wristbands, didn't they?
Right, exactly. Yeah, all of that stuff. It was weird. It was weird as well because it was at the same time it felt like so strange being there and being around that many people. But then it also felt like nothing had ever changed, and like you were stood in a field catching up with mates, and it was definitely a strange environment.
Yeah, going months for like being 6 feet away while wearing masks from like people in the supermarket too. There's literally hundreds of people here.
Yep, I'm sure everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, so crazy. I think with Download next year, they're doing the 20th anniversary and a 4th date. I thought if they did for the 4th date, like a pilot kind of thing, like no clashes, kind of a
that would be cool. Version. Yeah, I have no idea what they are doing, but that's definitely interesting. That makes perfect sense as to like what they could or should do or something like that.
Yeah, and kind of like
if they do that,
yeah, kind of like rearing in the new like generation of festival headliners, because there's only so many times I can ask Def Leppard to come on, isn't there?
Right, yeah, true. Obviously, we're not trying to tempt fate or anything like that, but there's probably only so many that Def Leppard have got left as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, returning back to the album, Páthos, talk to me about the title, because from what I understand, it means to appeal to emotions and elicit feelings from someone. Is that kind of what the album is about, human emotion and feelings? Is that kind of, not like it's a concept album, but it's kind of the themes going through it?
Yeah, that's like exactly it, essentially. So we, like, none of us had ever heard of the word before, but we were struggling to come up with a title that did fit the album, because there's so many like different kind of themes and topics that we touch on in one way or another. We were kind of struggling to find something that neatly packaged it and summarized it all. But then Jan, our drummer, stumbled across that word and like put it in the group chat and explained that, like you just said, it's the Greek for like, it's kind of the word that suffering comes from, and like those sort of similar words. But then like say it's specifically around like bringing out emotions and all that sort of stuff. And it just fit perfectly, because like you've just said, like you've nailed it. That is the one kind of consistent string through all of the songs. Like even if a song's looking at this or that, whenever we kind of write, it's not necessarily about the specific thing, but it always seems to end up being about the toll and the effect that thing has on a person, and like has on a person's mental health and emotional side and all that sort of stuff. So like there's different stuff to like on the album, from like dementia to like mourning and loss, to talking about stuff like fear and anxiety and like all these sort of things where they're similar and like they have that kind of sadness and say suffering to them in the emotion. And so that finding that word, it was kind of like, perfect. Like that fits 100% for what we're trying to get across here, rather than just like picking one song out of the hat to be a title track or something like that. It really tied it all together, I think.
Yeah. Is that something I think you've kind of conveyed with the album artwork as well? It's kind of a painting of like I don't know how to describe it, but obviously it's a person in the painting. And
it's kind of like the idea is that person is slumped over, and like it's clearly not a nice painting. It's not a person in a good place, but it still has, even though it kind of looks a bit gruesome with all those oil paints, like it's colorful. Like it is all these emotions coming out, and like that's kind of what it's meant to represent. And again, so then finding that word and pairing that with the artwork, it all just seemed to like come together perfectly, even though it wasn't planned that way. We had the artwork and the album way before we had the title. So we really landed on our feet with that one. But that's definitely the idea behind it.
Who was the artist that you went for the cover artwork?
The artwork, so it is a gentleman called Jean-Luc Almond, who we just stumbled across on Instagram when we were looking for kind of people to do the artwork, because we knew we wanted a painting, and we'd had that idea floating around way before we even had the album, kind of even before Maya. I can't remember if it was Maya or this album, but we had this grand idea initially where we wanted to get a painting commissioned for every single song on the album. And so it would be a thing where, like, obviously when you flick through the booklet, you'd have each painting, but even then just have the physical paintings where we could like put them up in a gallery or something and have like an event or something like that. But that just never really came together. Like we realized it would have been
ambitious, isn't it? That's ambitious.
A bit much of an undertaking. And then like the first kind of draft or something that we got back of the initial idea wasn't really kind of what we were going for. So I think that will have been Maya, because I think we then ended up scrapping that and having to change direction. And then we found Rodrigo, who did the Maya artwork, and he smashed it from like a completely different angle. But yeah, we still kept that idea and still wanted to do something with a painting. So when it came to like finally like, okay, well, we need to get it done, like we need to find someone, we all just kind of went to Instagram and the internet and like Google image search and tried to find people. And yeah, I ended up stumbling across his Instagram. And again, it was one of those things that's like, oh, this is really cool. But it also seems like if we could get him to do something that is specifically to do with our art and our album, that it could work really well.
Yeah.
And he smashed it. Like we got the first like finished version, or like the first finished draft whilst we were in the studio recording. And yeah, we all just looked at it on our phones and were like, that's amazing. Like he's absolutely smashed it. The only thing we changed from that thing that he sent us was we added a little more of like the oil and the color and stuff, because it was a little more sparse originally. But essentially what you see is what he gave us first time round, and it was essentially perfect.
Smash it out of the park then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were, because it's one of his, like, it's a painting as well. It's not like it's a digital thing where we can like, oh, change this, or could you go over this again, or anything like that. It's like, yeah, it was kind of, we were resigned to the fact of what we get is what we get, and like we're paying for it and all that sort of stuff. But smashed it, absolutely smashed it.
Yeah. So did you just send like, you know, kind of like a concept of roughly what you wanted? Did you send any of the music over for him to kind of use as like a reference point?
Yeah, so we sent him kind of the demos we had at that point, and then we sent him the pose that's in the painting. We sent him a photo of someone doing that essentially. And so yeah, he had a few kind of guides and that sort of stuff, but it was very much one of those things that's like, we like what you do, so here's the sort of pose and the sort of thing we're thinking of, here's the songs that it's meant to fit. But other than that, it was kind of do your thing. Yeah. And we got sent like updates along the way of like when he'd just painted the person before he'd put like the extra oil on it and stuff like that. But with the medium that it's in, it was very much, other than fine tweaks here and there, we got what we got. And so we looked out that he's an incredible artist and smashed it out of the park. Yeah.
Because I imagine if he sent over something, it was like completely the opposite end of what you were after.
Like, that was a very real possibility. And so it was a little bit scary, but it's kind of like, well, we get what we get. And if for whatever reason we don't like it, we're just going to have this painting that one of us might want in our house or something like that. But no, it's all gone well, luckily. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Has he done like some of the other art, not just like the cover, but within the inlay and stuff?
So what we did for that is we went and got, for the front cover as well, but we went and got the artwork photographed, like in a proper studio and all of that. And so all the stuff that's on the insert, and then it's the same for like the single artworks as well, where that's all the paint. It's basically all just photos taken from different angles and lighting of that one painting. So yeah, it's all connected, but it's that one piece, just maybe like, super zoomed in or like obscured by light or anything like that sort of thing.
Getting your money's worth from that painting then.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Smart. We know what we're doing.
Business savvy, yeah. So I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but Páthos is the first full length that you're a part of in Conjurer, because I think the Maya was recorded with the previous bassist, but you joined after it was recorded, but before it was released. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So the old bassist left, and it's hard to even say joined. I was told that I was in the band. I think they called me like the second last or the last day that they were in the studio recording Maya. And like, I'd been friends with them and we've known each other since like before even the band started. And like, I helped them do the demos for the EP and all that sort of stuff. So I've been around it the whole time. But yeah, you're right. I wasn't an official member until after Maya had been like written and recorded. So yeah, I was in all the photos and like I've done all the touring and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't quite 100% my thing. And so yeah, that's kind of what was a little bit, for me personally at least, slightly nerve-wracking about this. Is like, okay, well this is me now. So like, people love Maya. If people hate this, it's
all down on you.
I can't brush it off as like, oh well, I didn't write that. So it's very much my fault and my problem.
Yeah. The only thing that's changed is, you're in the band now. So
absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully people like it. If not, sorry.
Was it kind of like nerve-wracking to kind of, I mean, I think you kind of touched it there, didn't you? Like, did you kind of have any kind of pressure to go in the studio to deliver on this, especially with how Maya was received?
Yeah, a tiny bit me personally, but as a band, no. In that sense, like the other guys, I don't think really felt anything. Like the only pressure that we put on ourselves was to make sure that this was better than Maya, essentially. Like, we didn't want to just write Maya 2, and we wanted to push everything a little bit further and like bring in new influences and try new things and experiment and all that sort of stuff, and like just have it so that it is a clear like step up and progression for the band. But we didn't feel any pressure from like outside of that, if that makes sense, because pressure is probably not even the right word to say for like what we had of ourselves. That was more just an expectation we had of ourselves rather than a pressure. But no, we didn't have anything, or like we didn't feel anything from like the fact that it's been 4 years, or like, the fact that Maya was so well received. We didn't have anything from Nuclear Blast to be like, we need it and we need it done or by this time or anything like that. But as a band, we didn't feel any of that, because it's just a case of, we're the 4 people in the band, like we're going to write the music that we want to hear and like that we're happy with. Basically, if we don't like it, we're not going to put it out anyway. So we just focus on ourselves essentially in that sense. And then from there, if other people like it, then great. And it seems to be a case of so far so good. But as Conjurer, no, not really any pressure. But then like we were saying, for me personally, because I wasn't on Maya, there was that little bit of like, if people, I don't want it to be like Maya 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and me go, here's my song. We go 6 out of 10. Okay, well, that's a shame.
Well, I mean, like you say, the singles have gone down really well so far. Right. So, I mean,
and that's helped. That's helped definitely. I mean, most of that kind of in like internal personal pressure, I was kind of able to let go of once I heard it, like when it was fully mixed and mastered, like, because then I could hear it and I knew that I loved it and I was proud of it. And like, I think it's better than Maya. So a lot of that went away then. But then being able to put out the singles and it get a positive reaction again has meant that I could breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. It's like, it's going to be okay. I didn't fuck it up.
Just got to wait and hope the other, is it another 5, 6 tracks don't go like...
Exactly. That we released the 3 good ones and then the filler.
You kind of touched on, obviously, you guys have joined Nuclear Blast now. How did that kind of come about, and how's kind of the relationship you've been having with them?
It's been amazing. They've been great, like every step of the way. So we were on our old label that kind of had its own issues and whatnot. But even when we were on them, Nuclear Blast were going to be releasing the album anyway for like US and rest of the world. They were going to be like leasing it from our old label. And so we'd kind of already met the team a little bit and started having those conversations there. And we'd started building that relationship. And then so when our old label folded and we were looking for like a permanent home, Nuclear Blast were essentially the first people to be like, well, hey, we'd love to have you full time, which was incredible and like such an insane position to be in, like as a band of like kind of our position and our age and all that sort of stuff. To have a huge label like that wanting us was definitely very flattering. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't just say jump at the first chance we got, essentially. So we were fortunate enough to get offers from like other labels as well, and we had meetings and we met people just to say try and figure out what was going to be the right fit for us. But it did, and like say these were amazing labels with amazing people that we would have been very lucky to be on even if we weren't on Nuclear Blast. But we did always kind of have the sense that even though we were talking to these people, it always felt like it was going to be Nuclear Blast anyway. And then say it turned out to be that way anyway, that we did feel like after speaking to other people that Nuclear Blast was still the best place for us. So that's essentially how that came about. And then, since then it's just been, say, amazing. They're the best team, the best people to work with. They're like, the one worry we did have about Nuclear Blast is because it's a slightly older label, is we thought kind of it was just going to be a load of old heads who maybe had lost touch a little bit and like were signing us because we were a hot prospect rather than necessarily being fans of the band or anything like that. But no, it's essentially the opposite. Like the team is there because first and foremost they are fans of music and like they care, and that extends to our band as well. And it's just been a pleasure to work with them.
Nuclear Blast is kind of like known for being like such a reputable heavy label that bands kind of like dream to be on, like one of the heavy labels that you want to be on.
Definitely, that's the thing. That's kind of why we were like extremely flattered that they wanted us, but it was kind of like we wanted to do our due diligence to be like, well, seems a little too good to be true. So I don't know when we just make sure that everything's as it should be. But we've been blown away, and any silly little doubts that we did have been wiped out and all that sort of stuff. It's all very much so far so good, and we're super happy with where we are. So
other than the release of Páthos, obviously, what else is planned for Conjurer for the rest of 2022?
So we've got obviously the album's out, and then we've got a few European and UK festivals that we're doing.
Nice.
And we've got like Art Tingent in the UK and a few other ones like Brutal Assault, Summer Breeze, a load of these awesome festivals that we've never been able to do before. So festival season We've then got we're doing a headline tour end of October through start of November, which is like Europe and UK. So that'll be fun to like get out and be able to play all the new songs and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so that's then going to close out our year, and then the plan from there is 2023 onwards is just hit the ground running, like full steam ahead. Like we want to get out, do Europe again, go to America and Canada again, go places we haven't been before, like full Australia run, Japan, hopefully. So we don't have anything officially in the calendar. Like we obviously, these are just things that we want to do, and
like you hope to do.
Yeah, we can make them a reality, but it's just make sure the right offers come through, or we can set up the right tours for ourselves and all that sort of stuff. But in theory, it's and release the album, festival season, and then headline tour this year, and then just everywhere from beyond there.
Well, if it goes like Maya, then you're going to be touring for 3 or 4 years yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then in about 5 years' time, next album, and do it all again. Hopefully it's not as long for the next one, but it's one of those things like we just take it as it comes. Like we don't plan. We have no, like we said that we were going to, especially because we were doing it in a pandemic and we'd kind of got on a roll with writing the album. We were like, well, we'll just keep writing, and like rather than stop and have it be like 2 years before we try and write again, we'll just keep going so that we've got stuff in the pipeline for album 3. Didn't happen. We stopped writing the second that we finished in the studio and all that sort of stuff. So we have ideas for album 3, but no actual songs. And so we'll see. It could absolutely be another Maya thing where we're on the road for 2 years straight, which would be amazing. Like definitely not going to complain at that. Or it could be something where this flops monumentally and we're back to the drawing board in 6 months' time, and we'll try again.
Time to conjure up a new album at that point.
Okay, right. Well, you've ruined it now.
Well, even if you don't tour for like 3 or 4 years, I've heard the album, and it sounds to me like even if you don't tour for as long, you're going to get bigger tours. You're going to be playing with bigger bands. So,
well, thank you very much. So it's one of those things we don't do it like we didn't write the album to be like, this album is going to get us bigger this and better that and more money and all of that. Like we legitimately just wrote the album that we wanted to hear and an album that we love. But if those things do happen off the back of it, then perfect. Definitely not complaining. Yeah.
Before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, you got any final words? Anything you want to plug?
Not really. No, we've kind of all covered it. Like the only thing to plug is shows and stuff. And like, obviously I hope everybody checks out the album and I hope they like it. But other than that, don't have a huge amount. So no, I guess just thank you. I guess thank you to obviously people like yourself who have made the time and effort to invest in the band and the album and all that sort of stuff with reviews and articles and whatnot. And then kind of a pre-thank you to anyone who's going to pick up a copy or check it out and stream it or illegally download it or whatever. Thank you for checking out our band, because like we've already been able to do so much that we never anticipated being able to do. Like at this point we're just kind of grateful and just hoping it continues. So more than anything, thank you to everyone, and we hope you like the new album, and if you don't, well then it's okay to be wrong.
That's the way to do it, man. Well, thanks very much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. I'm sure you're going to do many great things off the back of this album, so
hopefully we'll see.
And hopefully I'll see you at a show soon. And
absolutely, be good to catch up, dude.
100%, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. I'll see you later.
You too, mate. Thank you. Bye.
And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider supporting the podcast in any way that you can. We have a Patreon where you can get access to each episode a week early, along with some other perks, a merch store, or you can leave a review wherever you're listening to this. You can also follow me on social media or subscribe to the newsletter, where I'll send out each episode to you via email, along with regular playlists. All this can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.